Hey everybody, RPG Guy here, and I finally did it. I bought Final Fantasy 15 for the PC because it finally came out on PC. Because I won't buy a fucking new console for one game. I'm not that much of a retard. It takes a decent library for me to buy a console nowadays. And I'm glad it came out because I know I had made some comments in the past with a lot of dread and worry regarding Final Fantasy 15, but I can kind of say now with a clean conscience and with all of my being that the game was okay. What, you thought I was going to say it was great? It was the rebirth of Square-Enix? No, far from it. But it wasn't a total pile of shit. Final Fantasy 13. Blah, blah, blah. It was palatable. It was tolerable. I will be objective in talking about it in this discussion. But I live streamed it blind. I did maybe 90% of the things to do in the game. I was really proud of myself. I was really enjoying myself, and I usually don't. In games that are very detractors from what the original franchise was to be. I went into 15 expecting to hate it. Okay, whereas we replayed Final Fantasy 13 prior to 15 coming out, and you guys know I despise that game with every ounce of my being. And that game was a pile of shit, and I might do a rant video just to get all of it off my chest. But first things first, 15, it scratched a little bit of an itch that I've been needing for a while, and it didn't annoy me, except for Prompto. He can go die in a fire, but it didn't get on my nerves. It didn't insult my intelligence too much. There's a few cringy things in it for me, but it wasn't a deal breaker. It was not a deal breaker, and there are aspects to it that worked. Number one, the story is short, and if the story is really good, I don't care if it's short. But this case, we'll talk about the story in a minute. To a degree, we will. But I will say this: the story was tolerable. I didn't sit there and bang my head against the wall, not understanding what was going on. I didn't fall into a place where the characters were ruining the experience for me because the characters were morons. Other than Prompto got on my nerves a little bit, but I'm not alone in this regard. A lot of people found him annoying, but it's like Riku in Final Fantasy X. There's a contingent of people that like those types of characters, and that's fine, and that's why it's like that character's not for me, but the other characters worked. Ignis is a good character. I liked Ignis. I liked Gladius. I didn't like the main character Noctis as much. I was expecting a little more from him, but it wasn't a deal breaker. It wasn't a deal breaker. It's almost as if the writers from the franchise, whoever wrote it, I'm wondering if it's the people that worked on 13. I haven't really looked at the credits too much, but maybe they took a class on writing good characters and not making shitty ones. Because most of the characters were good. The villain was decent. He wasn't bad. He wasn't terrible. He didn't do anything to offend me. And when I say offend, I don't mean like in the SJW context. I mean like he didn't insult my intelligence. I was really interesting to see how he played it out. The only negative thing was I picked out right away is that I didn't like him from the get-go. And he kind of gave me the vibe that this is the villain, and he really kind of stuck out. It was very Sonic 06, where all the other people dress normally in the world, and they dress up like people normally do in like the Midwest. And then you have this character who's completely flamboyantly dressed. He's very snarky. He's very awkward, and it's really it borrows a lot from Final Fantasy VI. And I don't know if anybody's brought that up in discussion, but Final Fantasy 15 I almost swore it was ripping off Final Fantasy VI at times, but I was okay with it. I was mostly okay with it. I found it a little entertaining to connect the dots between Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy 15. You know, with the main villain being Kefka-like in nature, and to a degree, but not well. He's like imagine an evil Tony Stark. Not the creative part, but just the way that the character behaves, the mannerisms. just think of an evil Tony Stark, and that's to me the main main villain in a nutshell. Now here's where the things I like. The combat system didn't annoy me. Okay, not really. I still miss the traditional combat styles of the Final Fantasy games of old. I wish they would bring them back. I wish they would actually do a full, Final Fantasy VII remake of the first Final Fantasy. Create 4 characters with distinct personalities. Give them the royal treatment, and I think a good game you will make. To me, that's what a remake should be, and those games definitely deserve it to be redone mechanically from the ground up, even to be more accessible and more entertaining. But especially 2 and 3, Final Fantasies 2 and 3 for the Famicom. But back on topic with 15, it never took me too much out of the story. It was something I could make fun of a little bit, but it was like a fun, like, oh wow, that's very Final Fantasy 6-ish of you. Oh wow, look at that, you have this kind of World of Ruin kind of thing going on. Oh, how Final Fantasy 6 of you. You have this character who is who's an advisor to the Emperor of the other kingdom. Oh, how Final Fantasy 6. And he's kind of crazy and he's kind of sick and twisted in his own right. Much more cleverly done than Kefka, but Kefka's a little bit more malicious and more batshit crazy outright. So if you wanted to say, a lot of people know I compare Kefka Palazzo to the Joker, and I still to this day I've never gotten an answer. Who came first, the self-destructive Joker, or did Kefka come first? Because I question that a little bit. Even if they came out at around the same time, it's interesting because I doubt DC Comics were big in Japan. So interesting. Who was ripping off? No, who? I'm just kidding. I'm sure the Joker is probably more established as a nihilistic psychopath. But anyway, back on topic. So that's the big thing for me, was that I was enjoying parts of the story when it was happening. My only criticism of the story and dare I say the pacing is that the one thing I like the world. So let me explain that really quick right now. I enjoyed the world that Final Fantasy 15 takes place in. The locations are interesting. The monster sprites are almost borderline Final Fantasy 13. Like, wow, you need to create some more, you need to create some more monster varietals and stop constantly cut and pasting the skeletons and then changing the palettes. But they're definitely way more than there were in 13, so it really didn't stick out to me that much. Whereas in Final Fantasy 13, my viewers were actually tallying up how many 3D skeleton models were actually being replastered over and over, so that way you could figure out, okay, this is how many models they actually made for enemies in the game, and it was less than like 20. It was like less than 30 models, and I want to say it was less than 20 models. I think it was like 15 or 16 enemy models, and all they did was either make the enemies bigger and changed a few aesthetics, or they made it smaller and changed a few aesthetics. And if anybody says, well, the other Final Fantasy palettes swept all the time, that's true, but I would say there's probably 50 unique monsters in almost every Final Fantasy game, up to maybe 10. 10 was where the recycling started to happen a lot. But it wasn't to the point of annoyance to me like it was in 13. 15 didn't actually annoy me that much regarding that, so I don't really consider that a problem. Now, I've been talking about some of the good aspects of the game because it's kind of easy to do that. The voice acting was good. The characters were well written. The primary characters were well written. And serve their roles nicely. The story is okay. It's like I said, it didn't blow my mind or made me like shoot a rocket of diarrhea out my ass and made me fly through a ceiling into the moon. But it was a very coherent story. And here's the thing: the story isn't that great, but you care about the characters because they're so well written. In comparison to Final Fantasy 13 and 12, mind you, I am comparing them to those. It's well written. They're well written enough that you want to see them succeed at what they set out to do, and you want to see these characters' relationships evolve, and you want to see these characters actually accomplish the things they set out to do, and when something bad happens to them, you really feel their struggle and their pain to a degree. Again, this isn't the best. I still stand by other Final Fantasy games doing that a little better, but this is the first Neo Final Fantasy game, Neo being the new era of Final Fantasies, anything after 10, where I start realizing that, okay, where I'm like, okay, at least they're starting to get characterization better. And they understand that the bond that Noctis and his friends share is important. And yes, riddle us with their backstories. Let us know more about these characters and understand what they are. Make them unique and distinct. Don't make their narrative, even if they all agree on the same thing, they agree on it for different reasons. Create those story arcs, character arcs that make us want to keep watching these characters move forward. And Final Fantasy 15 does a decent job at doing that. And you guys think I'm a negative Nancy about every fucking new game. It's not true. This is a good interpretation. This is a good way to show that for me to even express to you guys that if you create lovable, wonderfully well-written characters with great personalities, with great interconnectivity with how they respond and act with each other and play off each other to a degree, the story doesn't need to be the fucking cat's meow. It doesn't need to be Tolkien in how grandiose it is. It doesn't need to be those things. Final Fantasy V is kind of a parody of the concept of that. This grandiose event is happening, but it's so lighthearted, and the characters are so fun, and you enjoy being around the characters and watching everything transpire around them and how they react to it, that you want to see them succeed. And the story, like I said, Exodus is an okay villain. He's not the greatest villain ever, but you don't want to see the characters of Final Fantasy V fail. The same argument can be made for 15. I don't want to see these characters fail, and I enjoy spending time with them on the fucking fantasy road trip that we went on. Now, again, I've talked about a lot of positives. Visually, the game looks great. I enjoyed the vistas. I enjoyed driving around and just looking out upon yonder to see what I could see. I enjoyed exploring new areas. I mean, when I could manually drive the car, I always did. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I rarely ever even flew the airship. I don't even think I did it in the game's live stream at any point. I never really used the big 4x4 off-roading stuff either. I liked enjoying the game's visuals, and I liked enjoying the environment in the world, and I didn't think it would be... It didn't seem like it was adding anything for me to just go into the world and start dicking around and messing with things Grand Theft Auto style. I didn't need the car to go off-road in order to have a good time. I had a good time exploring and seeing the world unfold before my eyes, and this is a good thing within Final Fantasy 15, as it is also the bane of something bad that's in Final Fantasy 15. So I've been sitting here for the last 13 minutes telling you how wonderful Final Fantasy 15 is, to at least some moderate degree. But Final Fantasy 15 falls into the same problems that 13 and 12 did. And it seemed like everything was going so well. And for me, I'm not alone in this opinion, is like I said, the characters are really well written. Okay, for in recent years. The negative is that the world, though ever expansive, as you progress through the game, the world in and itself shrinks. It becomes a shadow of its former self. The fun, the experience that you were having, driving around, having a good time. Not even having a good time enjoying the scenery. I could be driving around in fucking the devil's armpit with these guys, and I just, the idea that I could explore with these guys, even if spoiler alert, go fuck yourself, spoiler alert, there's the world of ruin. If I didn't give that away earlier, there's a world of ruin, pretty much, and it's even called the world of ruin. And I was like, ooh, do I get to explore this? No? I'm being told to go fuck myself? Aww. Oh, look, there's this giant, city that's an island city, and there's all these little islands, and I have a boat, and I can drive around to the islands. Can I go on the islands? No. But earlier I could drive around in a car and climb the tallest mountains and kill the biggest monsters and explore the most coolest of places. Oh yeah, well, halfway through the game, yeah, no, sorry, we don't have that for you. Okay, all right, we're on a train. Well, trains are incredibly linear, that's fine. But we're on a new continent. Oh, wow, a new continent. Holy shit. I'm in a train station and I can way above the ground I can look down and see like all like these roads, there's cars driving along it, there's little buildings, and I can see like a harbor city out in the distance. Yeah, sorry, you don't get to explore that either. The fuck? You're shitting me, right? And this was where the game started to lose me. It won me over on the fact that the world was well established. It was good world building for what it was. It was simple world building, which, if you think simplistic world building is bad, I dare to say that you can have simplistic world building as long as the simplistic elements of it are entertaining to do and see and partake in. And that's what I was getting through the first quarter of the game. I would say the first quarter of the game is just that. It's this big, expansive world for you to explore, and you can tackle the main story at your own leisure, and you can enjoy everything there is in the world to the nth degree, and still enjoy the main story leading up to where you get the boat. And then the boat is like, oh, well, you get to drive the boat around, but there's not as much you can do. Oh, hey, you're on a new continent, and you don't get to drive any vehicles. And then there's even less to explore and do. And this is where the game begins to lose me. I would have personally been happy if Final Fantasy 15 stopped after the big city island. Okay? Where all the heroes go to Luna Freya's country. I forget the name of the city already, because that's how much I didn't really care at that point, because it was already starting to lose me. And then they end the game there, and then they release the sequel. That's the second half of the game, where you're on the other continent. Okay? And if you want to go back to the first continent, and think of it like a DLC. Okay? I would look at it that way, as like a big $60 DLC pack that gives you the whole Imperial continent to explore with your car and everything else. And that to me would have been fun. It would have been, that was what I was kind of expecting or hoping for. And that's where the game let me down a little bit. The linearity of the story began to like poke me constantly, like a little kid poking someone, saying, "Hey, mister, hey, mister, hey, mister, hey, mister," and I'm like, the world kept this vast world that I loved. I will say this: I loved exploring Final Fantasy 15. I loved driving around. I loved the sights. I loved the sounds. I loved the people. To a degree, I loved going around and doing the thing. I liked doing that stuff. And then as the game progressed, it's like, fuck you, nope, taking it away. No, you can't have that, no. And if you're gonna sit there and go, well, you could always use Umbra to go back in time and go back to that time when you could do that. It's like, that's fine, but that just seems really lazy. And I know that this game was in like development hell for like 10 years. Okay, I get that. My point is still valid. Give me that half of the game. Give me the half of the game that leads up to, the island. Do the stuff on Luna Freya's country, and then end the game there, and then say next time on Final Fantasy 15, and they could have doubled their money, because you've already created the characters. They already know the penultimate storyline and its play out. They knew how the story was going to begin, how it was going to end. They could have really done so much more. And they could have recycled the first game's world of balance and created the world of ruin for you to explore alongside a new continent. And like I said, this is where the game loses me a little bit, and it was a little disappointing as that the world began to shrink before my eyes. And yeah, it's story driven after the Luna Freya incident. It is story driven why it shrinks somewhat, but it was like a big cock tease. And it lingered in my mind, and it was very. It's not a deal breaker, though. I'm going to tell you that it's not a deal breaker. It is a observation, though. If Square-Enix would ever watch these videos, which I know they don't, and I know they never will, but it's that little hint. If they ever did, it's like this could have been handled a little better. And it seemed like, again, they focused that first quarter of the game was what they really wanted to have the whole game kind of be. Even in the last zone of the game, there's a little bit of that exploration again, but it's too little too late, and it's too minuscule and small to really give a crap about it, in my opinion. So it's and that's where it hurts me as a fan the most, because I want to sit here and say Final Fantasy 15 is up there with Final Fantasies maybe 6 and 7 to me. And you guys know I don't think 7's the fucking cat's meow of Final Fantasy games. But to me it was going that way, and the callbacks, or not callbacks, but the regurgitating of Final Fantasy 6 plot elements didn't bother me, because I really was invested in this character and these characters in the world. So things that would have bothered me if they were executed fucking terribly. See, look, it wasn't executed terribly. It was executed moderately, if anything, a little better than moderately. So it didn't annoy me, and it didn't take me out of the game. So there's an example of maybe the middle ground for a gamer like me, if you guys do care about my opinion to some degree, or just curious. This is where my opinion derives from. It's like, okay, you can recycle and regurgitate all the old Final Fantasy shit out there as long as it's executed well, and you do a good job executing it. Then I care. Then I think you're doing a good job. Then I'm going to say it's a good job. Okay? And it didn't bother me that there was that many rip-offs of or borrowings from Final Fantasy VI, plot-wise and design and world design-wise. My biggest criticism for me primarily stems from that Final Fantasy 15 had the best start of a Final Fantasy game. I would even argue it starts a little bit better than Final Fantasy 10. It has a better kind of startup. I'm already enjoying the characters, and I haven't even gotten them past level 5. I at least enjoy the quartet of main characters so far. To a degree, at least understand their motivations and what's going on around them and so on. But at the end of the day, for me, that was the big thing, was I enjoyed the trip. I enjoyed the road trip. I enjoyed the adventure. And to see myself getting a little bit less enjoyment out of it as the game progressed, like as the game went on and on and on, I was like, when am I going to get to explore again? Am I going to get to like do more stuff with my buds? Are we going to have a good time again like we did in the beginning? Or are we, even if it's not a good time, I mean, are we going to get to do something, anything? And like what we did in the first part of the game. It almost seems like I was saying, it almost seemed like as they were making this game, the first quarter of the game was really what the game wanted to be. And then as the timeline was getting cut, and they didn't want to throw more money at this game, or they didn't have the development time, they weren't going to be given the extensions it needed, you start seeing the true colors of what happened. And I start seeing the lazy aspects of Final Fantasy 13 and 12 rearing its ugly head. The pointless and unnecessary linearity that was in 13, it's starting to show its ugly face. And I pointed that out as soon as it started happening. I was like, oh no, please tell me this is not how this game's going to continue for the rest of the game. And it started to do that, and then I'm sitting there going, oh no. At least I was still entertained by the characters' plights, that it wasn't a deal breaker at that point. But it left me wanting more. It left me hungry for action, hungry for blood. Hell, I was just plain old hungry, but it left me wanting more. And it left me wanting to explore this interesting world. They were even shoving how interesting the world was in your fucking face. That city where Luna Freya is from, it's fucking gorgeous. I'd sit naked on a beach and get a tan there while being fed grapes by naked hookers. It would be fun. I wanted to have fun and explore that world more. When you're on the train and you see the desert world right next to the world of snow, I wanted to see that world. I wanted to explore. I'm like, let me off the train. Pull over the fucking train. Do it. I want to see what's over there. There's so many cool things that must be out there. Stop the fucking train. And nope. You're not allowed to have fun like that again. And yeah, for as much as we could go back in time, which I always thought that was kind of a weak plug-in to saying, oh, well, we still have that open world you liked, just go talk to Umbra. And it's Umbra. And I'm like, shouldn't have to talk to a fucking dog to enjoy the open worldness again. Why can't you just make that open world feel congruent with the story that you've written? Don't show me these cool areas I can't explore. Don't show me these really cool places I can go. Don't show me these really cool places if I can't fucking go to them. You fucks. And that's kind of... That was kind of starting to bother me a bit. And again, like I said, if people want a number grading for this is definitely the best of the modern Final Fantasies. Anything that's after Final Fantasy X, story-wise, that's not the MMOs. It's the closest in, not the closest to its for the successful ones I feel are the most successful in the more retro age, but to me, this Final Fantasy is a step in the right direction. If this is the direction they want to go, this is the first execution that I'm like, okay, they have finally executed it to a degree. And then halfway through the game, it's like, you're fucking it up. And it makes me wonder if the time restraints were a part of that, or the time constraints were a part of that. And this is my thing where it's like, yeah, they needed the money. They should have made part 1 and part 2 out of it. And that would have been like for the night and day thing. If that whole game gave me the ability to explore everything that I saw on that world map to the same, equally, I think I would have loved that game. I think it would have been, to me, the magnum opus of the franchise, the modern franchise, and I would argue it would have been a competitor to the most successful games of the franchise. But it didn't do that, did it? Not really. And that may be my penultimate criticism, is that it had a good thing going for it, and then they're kind of like, oh, running out of time, we've got to get the story going, drop the ball. And that's fine. Again, it's my personal criticism of it. It doesn't in itself make the game bad. Okay, I'm not sitting here saying the game is terrible because they twiddled these $100 bills in front of you, and then they gave you one, and then, they said they were going to give you more, and they didn't. It's not like that, okay? It was, to me, maybe this could be a Final Fantasy experiment to see what works and what doesn't in the eyes of the fan base, and this has worked. The first quarter of the game, which I spent most of the hours of the gameplay doing, because I loved and enjoyed side questing to some degree. Some of it was kind of stupid, but I did enjoy it. I enjoyed that spectacle far more than I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the open world more than I enjoyed the story, and I enjoyed the open world because the characters were fun to be in that open world with to some degree. And so, again, this was something that worked. It worked. Square-Enix, you figured that part out. Now we just got to get you to figure out the rest. And I think it would be is that again, I still stand by it should have been 2 games. And this is a game that would have been warranting of a sequel. And then you stop the game after the big Leviathan incident and just stop it there. Stop it there. And then do your little, DLC games for that while you're developing, part 2. And I think they would have been able to do a lot more. I think it would have been, if they would have offered more on the table for this story and this world that they've created, it could have been, like I said, the magnum opus, and it could have been definitely comparable to the Final Fantasies of old that are the crowning achievements of the franchise. So there are good things here. The music's good for what it's worth. It's fine. I have no qualms with it. The visuals, the graphics are phenomenal. The battle system, I know you guys want to hear about that. The magic part of the battle system seems to be wasted a lot. Not a big fan of the magic portion of Final Fantasy 15. They kind of dropped the ball there. But, if you like Kingdom Hearts or Rogue Galaxy or The Last Story, yeah, you're going to like the battle system here. It's pretty much ripping off all of those 3 games and rolling it into one. And it's not a deal breaker or anything like that. It's just, it doesn't really feel like a Final Fantasy game to me. But there are aspects of it that I did enjoy. And there are parts of it that, for me, the battles felt big. They felt big in a sense that I felt like when I beat a grand enemy, I felt accomplishment. Spoiler alert, if you haven't played the game yet, I do recommend it. I think you should pick it up when it's on sale on Steam, but I do recommend it. Spoiler alert. So when you fight the deity figures, the eidolons, Titan, we don't really fight Ramu, but definitely the Titan and Leviathan, those were fun. I enjoyed the concept of having to do this. I almost wish they did it more. And again, this is where if they cut the story in half and made it Final Fantasy 15 Part 1 and 2, this would have been good. But I felt Bahamut was wasted. Shiva was okay. Ramu was kind of wasted. I mean, summoning him is always fun, but I felt some aspects of these eidolons are wasted. But like Titan and Leviathan were not to me. And again, like I said, I would have liked to see more of that. I would have liked to see more of how the world functions with these deity-like figures, these titans, if you will, of the old world. And it could have explored that a bit more. Again, if they made a sequel and cut the game in half, they could have spent more time developing that whole idea. See, I'm still going back to my initial thesis here. They should have split the game into 2 parts and gave you a big open world in both games, and spend more time allowing you to have that. And like I said, that to me would have been the best aspect of Final Fantasy 15 if they would have done that. They didn't do that, so that it would be my ultimate criticism is that the first chunk of the game is the smorgasbord of everything I would want that game to be. In other words, the way it was designed and the intent of what the game design was meant for, it all works to me in that world. It all fits. It's entertaining and it works. When you take away those elements of the game loses what makes it unique and what makes it interesting, to a degree, and it loses its flair. And to me, that was what made it lose its flair. Was like, oh god, the whole game's gonna be like this, and then you get halfway through the game and go, nope, hallway games again. And like I said, linearity is fine as long as there's a reason for it, and it didn't feel like it was necessary to have it be that linear that quick. And then it left me wanting more when we started seeing other places that I thought we would get to explore, and then we didn't. So, initially I was having a really good time. I was very surprised by the game's performance and the story and the things you could do. Sometimes, I will say this, is that there's sometimes a few too many side quests that they can give you access to between story segments. So I would go on like 6 hours of side questing to enjoy that 1 hour or that 10 to 15 minutes of story dialogue, then go on another 6 hour side quests, and then another 10 minutes of story. You need to control that a little better, I think. You don't want all your sub quests and stuff at the end of the game, but you don't want all your sub quests. You don't want to have 6 hours of sub quests between story elements too much either. They should be a little bit more sporadic. And again, so what I ended up doing was, like, as soon as the game started, I didn't really do much storyline wise until I was like way overpowered from side questing the whole time. I was so overpowered, even the final boss and all the other little sub bosses and stuff didn't pose that much of a challenge. And all I did was do all the side questing, and I did a lot of exploring. So again, that's indicative of maybe some bad side quest planning. Eventually they should run out of quests and side things for you to do, let you push on with the story, and so on and so forth. And they do that. It's just they're so far apart. It's a little kind of like, come on, man, don't make me do this. And I'm a little OCD with side quests in the sandbox games. I like to do as many as I can before I continue on with the story, because I figure in my mind, if I do all these side quests, I'll have the best possible opportunity to deal with the storyline stuff. And then I find out later I'm just way too overpowered. Again, though, not a problem to me. It wasn't a problem. I had a good time with what they gave me. I didn't feel ripped off by the experience. It left me wanting more from them. My expectation going forward is a bit higher. I wish they would fix that little problem. It's like, don't create this big epic world and then only let us explore a fraction of it to the funnest degree that you can offer, and then the rest of it's just kind of shoehorned in there. And it's like, it felt like I was rushing through the game almost. It felt like I was trying to speed run the game, because it was just after I did everything in the overworld there was to do on the main continent, the first continent. It was like there wasn't really much to do on the other continents at all, and there was no exploration really on the other continents. So it kind of broke down into, it's just story plot after story plot after story plot with a few little side questy things here and there that you do within the story places you got to go. And again, that's where the game kind of started to lose me a little bit. It's like really taking that big fun world away from me and not making it relevant anymore. It was a thing of the past. So, but that, so if somebody wanted to give me a rating on this game, it's definitely a 6 or a 7 out of 10. I would say it's a 6 in my opinion. The 7 potential would have been if the game wasn't too linear near the end. If they gave you more if they give you more to do, near maybe the back quarter of the game. If it wanted to be an 8 or a 9, it needed to keep that open world environment a constant until maybe end game, very end game. Keep giving us, the player, more things for our characters to interact with in this big world, because that's really what sold the game to me, was the characters and how they reacted to the plights and the adventures they went on. It is literally a road trip video game. It's very hard to see that game as anything else. Some people say it's Final Fantasy, it's GTFF, Grand Theft Final Fantasy. I don't see that so much. I get where the parallel comes from. But to me, it was like the first video game that felt like a legitimate road trip, like an RPG game parallel of like going on a road trip with your buds. And as goofy and as very Final Fantasy-ish humor-wise that the game kind of was, for pretty boys, for girls to ogle, and for other men to go, oh my god, his abs... I could just rub him. I could have him shave my beard off with his Gladius's abs. As funny as that kind of was to me, it didn't distract from the game at all. There was a little bit of humor distraction where the NPCs look like regular people, but the characters do not look like regular people. The main characters, and I have to say, I enjoyed the overall experience. I do recommend this game. I get it on a Steam sale. Maybe, I don't know if you're a fan of Final Fantasy games, but you've been reluctant to want to play the newer ones. This might be the first one to break you into the new fold. It's got its problems, and I mentioned those very clearly so far. But I have no major qualms with these problems. It didn't detract from what Square-Enix made. I give it an A. I give it a B for effort. They would have gotten an A if they could keep that world growing instead of shrinking. And again, shrinking is okay as long as it's like, oh, we have nothing really more to offer you. Let's do the end game stuff. And that thing in the end game where again, we've already done spoilers, so here's the spoiler. When you go back to Insomnia, that's fine to make the world that small at that point, because that's where everything at the end of the game is happening. That's where the bad things in the world are legitimately happening. And the focus needs to be on that smaller area. And then I'd buy that. I would be totally in support of that, but that's not what they did. They shrunk the game down like 90% once you got to maybe the quarter point, or I would even argue the halfway point of the game. The world instantly shrunk down to the open-endedness of a fucking gnat's asshole. Okay, and that was where I started to sit there and go, budget and time must be running out, because you guys are holding out on me. And I legitimately thought we were going to get more world exploration, and we didn't. But again, that's not a deal breaker for me. If you're new to Final Fantasy and this is your first Final Fantasy, you'll probably like it. If you're an old-time fan of the franchise, but you refuse to try the new ones on principle that the last few have been pretty terrible, this might be the first one to open up to. Griffin Man, a buddy of mine who's on our Chairman of the Board show, we're doing Gloomhaven soon, and we're gonna put that up on YouTube as well as put it up on Twitch. And we were talking. He asked me about 15 because he heard I streamed it, and he's like, "So what'd you think of it?" And I said, "I liked the first half of it, or the first quarter to half of it." And he's like, "What about the other half? The story sucked?" And I'm like, "No, the story didn't really suck that much. It's just all the cool stuff that makes Final Fantasy 15 wonderful and fun loses its momentum. It slams on the brakes, and you're back in that hallway again in Final Fantasy 13. But at least the characters keep it somewhat interesting to a degree. To a degree, even some of them start to hurt as the game progresses. But it was tolerable because I enjoyed myself through that first quarter to half of the game. And so, yeah, that's really my discussion on Final Fantasy 15, because a lot of people have asked me about it, especially since it came out on Steam. And I hope this gives you guys some insight into what I was hoping for, what I think about the game, and the pros and the cons about it. And if you are an old school Final Fantasy fan and you're still on the fence about it, you know what? Get it on a Steam sale for 30% off, and it's probably worth it. Because, $40, $50, I think I paid 50 for it or something. But $40 or $30, yeah, that game is totally worth your $34, $50, $30 to $40, because you do get an experience that is unique for itself. It is derivative. It's a very derivative game. Even the story, like I said, it borrows a lot, and I don't even use the term borrow because it kind of legitimately steals a lot from Final Fantasy VI, and obviously it's very derivative of other. It borrows a lot from other sandbox games like Grand Theft Auto. It reminded me a lot of The Last Story as far as the gameplay, kind of, but the world exploration was very Grand Theft Auto-like, or any game where you have an open box kind of world to explore. It really was reminiscent of that. And those are fun elements to have. It seems like they had a solid understanding of it, and again, until halfway through the game. But, I'm willing to sit down, and play it again. Maybe I'll do an LP of it. I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to do LPs of new stuff because it gets flagged all the time. But that's something that, maybe I'll sit down and try to do like a 100% playthrough or an 80% playthrough of Final Fantasy. Maybe not do the hardest stuff out there, but, maybe I'll sit down and tackle it out again. I was going to do an LP of Wind Waker, but you get flagged so many times for that shit from Nintendo. They can kiss the fattest part of my ass. So anyway, those are my thoughts about Final Fantasy 15. It's a decent game. It's the best of anything of the modern age of Final Fantasies regarding their single-player stories. I think this is the first Final Fantasy since 10 that's been worth your money. And it let me down in a few places, but it wasn't the end of the world for me. It wasn't a complete cavalcade of failure like other games. 13. And I think that if you're a casual gamer, you'll like the game because you can play it casually in a casual way. If you're a hardcore gamer, you're going to like the hardcore elements and stuff that they present to you in it too. So I will say this, that the story is a little weird if you don't read the backstory stuff in the tutorial. If you haven't seen Kingsglaive, there's also an anime that I did not watch at first, but I went and watched it later for Final Fantasy 15. It's like an OVA movie. I recommend you see those two things prior to playing the game. Even if you just see Kingsglaive, that's enough. And that definitely will give you more of an understanding of the game. I do think that the backstory stuff that's in the tutorial room for the story of Eos, that is enough to get you by and enjoy the game. But if you I personally think that you'll like Kingsglaive is okay. It's not a great movie, but it's okay. And then when you pair it up with Final Fantasy 15, you have a better understanding of your character's plight and everything going on around that character, the character of Noctis and his buddies. And then the anime, the OVA that was done for Final Fantasy 15 further explains the relationship of the four main characters and how they became dude bros. And I like those characters, so it worked out. So those are again, those are things that if you're gonna play the game, I do suggest you see them because it'll just make the game more It's you don't need it to enjoy the game, but it'll make the game more immersive for you beyond the immersion that it already does give you. Which again, the story, like Final Fantasy 13, it's very, very short, but at least it's more coherent, it's more interesting, and you actually care about the characters enough to care to see them succeed. Whereas 13, I didn't like any of the characters, and I wanted them all to burn in a fire except for the little baby Chocobo, and I did want to see Zaz maybe succeed a little bit. I'm not that much of an asshat. He was the only decent character in that fucking game. But anyway, that, you know, I mean, 15 does a lot of things right. The things that it does wrong, you know, maybe I hope they learn from it. I hope that they understand, you know, people point this flaw out about the game. And I hope to see this as the beginning of the improvement. If the battle system or the exploration aspect of it is going to be what we see in the Final Fantasy VII Remake, I'm not as abrasive to it now. I'm not as concerned. If that's not what they're going to do, and they're not going to kind of just make the original, but make it look really good and add more content and story to it and whatnot, and be more story-like in nature, I'd worry. But if mechanically Final Fantasy VII plays like Final Fantasy 15, I'll be a little disappointed. But again, if it's handled well, it won't be a deal breaker. If it's handled piss poorly, it'll be a deal breaker. But yeah. I mean, I have to say this is the first Final Fantasy game in a decade that I can get behind a little bit. I'm a little happy that I am happy that I played it. And I know I've been such a cynical bastard when it comes to games that I despise and franchises failing and falling over themselves, but this was refreshing for me. It was a reminder that all is not lost. Square-Enix, you didn't completely lose my faith in you with this particular game. There again, I have my problems with it, but they're not damning, and I just hope to see it continue to improve. What did you guys think of Final Fantasy 15? Do you think I'm being a little too harsh about the end part of the game, the world shrinkage and stuff like that, or did you kind of wish they gave you a little bit more to do on the other places you could explore as well? Would you like to see them do in Final Fantasy 16? Maybe I'll do a speculation on 16 and what they should do there. That might be fun. But yeah, so let me know what you guys think in the comment section, and we'll see you on the next RPG Guy Talks. Maybe I'll do a rage-filled rant of my most recent experience playing Final Fantasy 13. It's all I have to say is my viewers felt my pain, and a lot of them were like, "Oh, dude, it's not as bad as you think," and we beat the game, and they're all like, "Oh no, it was worse than what you think," and they were all people like, "I really like this game, but watching you play it and just realizing that it's not as good as I thought it was when I first played it," and it's like, yeah, you were a fanboy when it first came out. You were like, "Oh, this is gonna be good. It's gonna be better than 12," and it wasn't. It wasn't better than 12. And 12 wasn't even that good to begin with. And then you're like, yeah, it all starts to register. So I have my own problems with 13, and maybe I'll do a rage video about 13. There's some people that I enjoy watching on YouTube who've said good things about 13. I want to know what drugs they're on and where I can get them. But, you know, a lot of my opinions, these are my opinions, and my opinions are sometimes are subjective. But the things that I do dislike about 13 and the things that I dislike about 15 are objective. It's like, okay, these are things you guys need to iron out because you could have done more, and I wanted more. So, but it's good to see them on the right track for the first time in, for me, 10 years. So anyway, as far as the solo RPG stuff goes. So anyway, thank you guys for stopping by. I am your host, the RPG Guy. Subscribe, click that like button if you even if you didn't agree with me, click it anyway, because, we're trying to be objective here. If you're a fanboy, there's no helping you, my friend. Hello, darkness, my old friend. You're about to take it in the rear end with the Square-Enix cactus cock. It's gonna create a big-ass block of swollen pain in your butthole. Oh, no. Okay, enough of that. Anyway, it's just, me being objective and not being a fanboy of the franchise, this is, to me, the first good Final Fantasy since 10, and I didn't think 10 was that great, but it was better than everything after it, excluding the MMOs. And I hope that this is a start to a brighter Final Fantasy franchised future. I really do. Thank you guys for stopping by. I am your host, the RPG Guy. We'll see you guys next time. Bye. Mr. Popo, no! Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Please take a moment to check out more episodes from the RPG Guy, Tuesday Night Team Up, and more. And please subscribe. Always support the channels you enjoy watching, and while you're at it, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. Keep on gaming hard. See you next time.